We've been working on cybersecurity for quite a while. But what I wanted to start with is a little background on the industry. So, building automation security is a relatively new works are heavily gravitating now towards IT-centric, Ethernet-based systems, other things, all the way down to the terminal level. And that really raises the stakes in the game for the convergence that we've been talking about between building automation and IT. We've been talking about that convergence for 20 years, and it's finally upon us. And that means that we have to change our behavior in some way. And while some may think security is a new topic to the industry, we've actually been, starting in 1820, heat was invented, central heating. 1926, the first, the Arab oil embargo, the energy shock, which really kicked the industry into high gear. Finally, NetSC primarily used mechanical controls. They were all interoperable and proprietary lock-in by vendors primarily. And for the design, Internet radio was going to have to try. IP came out back and as the AHR20 standard, and the original BACnet amount of demand industry. The problem is that problem. It's not really a technology problem. It's a procurement problem. 30-year process built at the beginning, which is changing at 3-year. What we decided by the time it was done. So as Cimetrics, the big communication hub, early talk of convergence, and in fact acquired a company. And at that time, they actually funded us. BACnet object model they used Azure. Convened the BACnet in November. All of the things that we were looking at to secure, whether customers or other mission-critical control system enterprise security in the United States. And I have to say that doesn't do process. So we've got in large organizations, as useful as Anto pointed out, as a set of organizing principles. Of the framework a little better because it shows things as really a core such as asset management. So what do you have? Risk management, figuring out what your risks are across that portfolio. Governance, and what's the business environment? What are you trying to do? So this is a very important phase, and we'll get into that a little more. Look at the next phase. It's called the protect phase. And this is where BACnet SC comes in, right here. But in the protect phase, there are lots of other things that need to be done as well, including policy and procedures, identity management and access control, maintenance. How do you keep, what's the ongoing updates that are needed to keep this stuff going? Training, maybe the biggest problem of all. And finally, data security. So if we go on, we have the detect phase. How do we know that that's actually a problem? How do we know that somebody is broken into our systems? Can we monitor this monitoring component as well? Okay, what happens if inevitably we get a breach? You have to figure out how to respond to it. You need to have communications, corporate communications, both to employees and external. And you need a response plan in your organization. Your whole system's wiped out, how are you going to get those backups restored, and how are you going to do that in a timely fashion? The systems to harden them further, and once again, communicate as well. So we have a really distinguished panel. This company, Totem, is focused on this area. And so it really identifies about developing the organizational understanding. After that, Jim Butler is going to actually take us through to ensure delivery of critical infrastructure services. So this is where BACnet SC comes in. Talk about the detect. How do you know somebody got into your system? The development and impact. Then Carol Lamonaco is going to implement appropriate activities to the action regarding or from the event. Then Andy McNeil short, 5 to 10 minutes, so most of the time to your questions as we go forward. Developing cybersecurity across the industrial sector and other sectors to look at cybersecurity. And maybe the most important one to us is three. And this is a set of security standards. For those of you who don't know, ISA used to stand for the Instrument Society of America. It's now just ISA. I think it's an artist formerly known as cybersecurity requirements for components and systems. So we're looking at the next thing it's about is product development for security. So for instance, what is the product development life cycle? How is the BAS industry, the vendors, going to get on top of constructing secure products? Know that it's a very complicated process, and in fact, most software isn't developed anymore. It's assembled in the lineage of those models and libraries. You're going to pull all this stuff together, whether it's open source, or you bought an example of the kind of policies that this puts in place. And so all of the security technology needs to be traceable and developed in such a way that it's meant. So in a lot of the technologies we're looking at for building automation, we're looking at leveraging off of the ISA secure standards as well. Okay, cybersecurity, here you can see from the picture, there are a lot of moving pieces here. It's basically cross-functional. So the security officer, the facilities group, the operation, cross-company. So you're going to have owners, facility managers, building operation managers, building automation system vendor, those groups, in terms of who gets the keys to the kingdom. Who will lead? They come down to the IT department or specialized facility IT departments. But that's once again, a really difficult question because our industry only does products and projects, and cybersecurity is a process. But I think finally, it's ongoing delivery of a service. And I think that is going to cause the biggest change because our channels in this industry are not configured for that really right now. But what does cybersecurity cost and who's going to pay for it? Use and equipment are capital assets. When does a building get real estate issue? When it's sold. Commercial real estate, when you sell a building, you have a pro forma, and once that pro forma is locked down, the financial terms of that bond are locked. The industry, who's going to pay for this continual process? Information technology, on the other hand, oh, by the way, those funding, whereas cybersecurity is moving on this 3-year time constant. How often do you get a new laptop? How often are your switches updated? So the question industry basically has to make that that jump, if you will, over the next 2 to 3 years. And I'm going to show you some of the orders. This is a great IBM study. It's a little stale. It's about 4 years old. But it shows what an enterprise customer would typically be losing in a cybersecurity event. So about $4 million divided up into lost business, detector. These are the kinds of orders of magnitude you're talking about. And obviously, everyone has issues with cybersecurity. So we've been doing some work. DoD is spending $30 billion a year to secure 8 million computers. They have 2 billion IoT devices, and they're currently spending $150 million. This is the kind of order of magnitude of change. If all of those IoT components become So now, what are we going to do about this as an industry? If we left things up to the course of usual events around here, it would be another 10 years. So as I see all the BACnet, it wasn't really adopted in the market for another to wait on this. The world will just pass us by. I have Andy speak to BACnet International accelerators that we're working on. So in that effort, we're basically trying to support the rapid implementation of BACnet SC by original equipment manufacturers. And that's through reference code and test devices, and accelerate. It's exciting, and it's something that we as a company are planning on getting involved with, and many other people have already signed up. Now, from the Cimetrics standpoint, we're concerned about implementing BACnet SC and getting it out there, but it turns out that BACnet SC doesn't do as much as we'd like. In fact, in an effort to get it out of the standards, to a consortium of folks in the industry to put those things back in. To put things in that give us a complete security solution, which is good enough to get to market sort of in a 18 to 24 month period. And I really would expect to start seeing serious products with BACnet Secure Connect by 2022. And of course, that even includes the big gates that the big companies have to go through to get all their IT security clearance. Well, what are these things that we're talking about? Well, imagine that every VAV box is going to require a security key. What happens when the facilities guy has to go to the VAV box? You're going to have to go to the IT department and get security credentials to work on that? And the answer is yes, unless we build a series of tools to address those issues. And that is exactly the kind of thing we're doing. Device and certificate management, interoperable configuration. If we left the manufacturers a perfect proprietary lock-in, if everyone has to do this in a proprietary fashion. If we do it in an open way, we're going to keep our interoperability and have our security too. Secure backup and restore. One of the biggest problems with these systems is if they're infected, they have to be wiped out. Largely, they'll stay that way, but we can go some part of the way there to getting backup to be interoperable and universal, so at least we can save what was there. Secure firmware updates. So everybody's familiar with what happens when your PC gets updated. What happens when all these embedded devices need to be updated? Without the ability to update that firmware, they're not considered secure. And finally, IT monitoring. It's not very interesting for the IT industry when we show up and say you got to learn BACnet. They have much more momentum than we do. So our goal there is to provide IT monitoring in a way that the IT departments are used to seeing it, to feed their SIEM tools and other event monitoring tools in their system. So we'll be generating that technology as well. Cimetrics is an early access program where we're collaborating to develop a specification. And that specification will be developed within the group and then turned back to the standards committees in about a year. And that's our time frame. It's very aggressive, but we think it'll get the industry on the same page and get everybody moving. So with that said, Anto gave me this as a conclusion. Cybersecurity is good. We really appreciate you all coming and look forward to a great panel. I'm going to let Anto introduce Steve now. Thank you very much.